I have had hundreds of comments and questions through my career about people asking me for last-minute exam advice, or asking me what should I do in these final 24 hours before the test or on the day of the exam itself. So rather than tell 100 different people advice through the comments or through email, I thought I'd just make one video giving my science-backed top 6 tips for what to do on exam day. It goes without saying that I did these things before my 780 in the GMAT and 340 in the GRE, and I really do believe they can help you get an edge, even if it's only a 5 or 10% edge. This video is not about last-minute learning or teaching you new concepts. It's just practical advice for things to do on the day, backed up by articles that I've linked to in the description. Without further ado, let me get to my last-minute tip number 1, which is to drink water. Now again, I've linked to the article from the BBC which describes the effect this can have, but to cut a long story short, it can give you a 5% exam boost to be hydrated during the exam. Now obviously you don't want to drink too much water so you're having to go to the toilet every half an hour, but just enough, say 1 bottle, to keep you hydrated can really give you an edge. The article talks about water having a physiological effect on the brain, and my pet theory is that it brings oxygen to the brain, and that's why it leads to greater exam performance. So have a bottle of water handy and drink it through your exam or in the breaks if you're not allowed to bring it into the actual exam room. Top tip number 2, walk to the exam. And there's a link here scientifically with the first tip. By walking, you're exercising your muscles, getting fresh air, and that is bringing oxygen to the brain, again, which can boost exam performance. I've linked to the articles in the description, but this is something that I've loved to do and advised people to do for many, many years. Not only is it about bringing oxygen to the brain for a better exam performance, it's also about gaining a bit of perspective. When I go on walks before an exam, I find it helps to alleviate anxiety, and also you can look around and realize the world is going to carry on before your exam, after your exam. No one really cares that much what you get in this exam, so it really doesn't matter that much. And that's another benefit of going on a walk. So if you're commuting in for your exam, that might mean getting off a couple of stops early, or if you're driving, parking a bit further away than you might have otherwise done. Again, exercise has been shown many, many times in science to boost performance long term. So if you find this advice helps you, and it really helped me, try getting into other exercise habits for the rest of your life, because the effects aren't just for the GRE and the GMAT. Exercise can boost your cognitive function across the board. Top tip number 3, and this kind of links with the second one. Turn up to the exam around 30 minutes early. Many people don't actually realize that you can start your GRE and GMAT exams early. You think it's a fixed time, but actually if you get there early, you can start early. There's another benefit. I don't know if you know this, but there are long queues at most GRE and GMAT test centers, especially around popular dates. And there's loads of security. And what that means is you have to put your hand on these readers and you have to fill in forms and you get scanned and checked. And if you've turned up just like 10 minutes before the exam, you're going to be stressing, thinking about, am I going to get in there on time? Whereas if you turn up early and these things happen and there's someone in front of you who's taking ages in the queue, who cares? You're early anyway. So turn up early, factor in a walk. Yes, it might mean waking up half an hour early, but that is worth it. There is an obvious additional benefit for turning up 30 minutes early. I have heard dozens, if not maybe hundreds of stories from students who've actually ended up being late for the exam because of public transportation or traffic or whatever. And that is definitely not a good idea. Obviously you lose time on the exam, and obviously your stress levels go up. You think it can't happen to you, but I've heard it happen to many, many students who've told me they turned up late and the exam went terribly. So you don't want to be one of those people. You want to turn up about 30 minutes early. I could say turn up an hour early or 2 hours early, but then that's just not realistic. No one's going to do that. Plus, if you're there that early, you're just going to be sitting around going, what am I doing with my life? So no, don't turn up crazy early, but half an hour, 45 minutes is perfect. My next top tip, and this applies to many students, especially the younger ones watching this, no last minute, frantic, final 15-minute revision. No checking of flashcards in the last 2 minutes before you get in there. What's the point? It's just stressing you out. I get that you think that you might learn one last thing. I just think that on balance, the net effect is going to be to stress you out more. And it would be better spending that time walking, as I said earlier, or just getting in there and getting the exam done. There is another important hidden benefit for not doing last minute revision, is that by telling yourself that you are not going to do any revision in the last 24 hours, which is what I advise, you're telling your earlier self to revise properly. If you're 3 weeks out or 6 weeks out from the exam, and you know you're going to do frantic all-nighters in the last few days, and you're going to look at your flashcards on the bus into the exam, you're going to be thinking to yourself, well, you know what, it's not that urgent, I've still got some time. Whereas if you tell yourself, no, final 24, 48 hours, I'm not going to do any revision, you're going to have to set yourself a rigorous study schedule. You know you can't leave it late, so you're forced to do it early. It's changing your mindset from a procrastinatory last minute thing to an organized discipline thing where you're fine for the test ahead of time. So put those flashcards away. On the day of the test, as you're going in, what will be, just enjoy it. My on the day exam tip number 5 is to walk in the breaks. In the GRE and the GMAT, you get 8 to 10 minute breaks twice in the test. And some people like to skip those breaks, or just maybe go to the toilet, come back, or maybe they just like to sit in their chair and think about stuff. For me, and I'm sure a lot of other people do this, you want to stand up, change your posture, walk around. It's all about reigniting those muscles, including your brain, which is not a muscle, but anyway, and then getting back into the flow of things. Back to kind of like tip number 2 about walking in general, but you want to exploit that break to really reignite your focus, intensify your concentration. And the science backs this up. Sitting down for too long is really bad for you anyway. I could do a whole separate video on why sitting down for longer than like an hour is not good for you in general. You want to be standing up, pacing around throughout your life, not just for the exam. Now, obviously, during the exam, you're constrained for certain time periods to be sat down, but in those breaks, you want to leap up, walk around, get out of those bad health habits and into good health habits. I remember reading, and I can link this down below, I think a New York Times article where it basically talked about how sitting is the new smoking. The damage long-term that long periods of sitting can do on you is almost equivalent to the same damage you could do in that time by smoking. Crazy, I know, but I'm glad to be telling you while you're still relatively young so that you can take this advice and stand up, stretch, move around, not just for the exam, but throughout your life. Top tip number 6, just expect the nerves. Don't be surprised by them. I mean, if I can get a raised heartbeat, a little bit nervous, a little bit sweaty going into the exam, and I knew I was going to crush it, and I knew it didn't really matter to my career that much what I got, then anyone can get nervous for this exam. There's pretty much nothing you can do about it, so you might as well just expect it, get used to it, enjoy it. And I think that final thing is important, enjoy it. I find when I'm in these stressful quote-unquote situations that it's like, wow, I'm living. Here's something kind of with a raised heartbeat. This is interesting, this is life, I'm living life. It's not like necessarily a real negative thing where you have to really dread it. It's kind of fun. You don't get many of those moments in life where your heartbeat goes a little faster and you know there's a little something riding on it. It's quite enjoyable. But even if you don't enjoy it and you don't like nerves, they're going to happen anyway. Nothing you can do about it. So just get used to it and get on with it. Now, I could make a whole video on repurposing exam nerves. And wait, I have, so you can check it out in my video library if you want to. But for now, you get the idea. Nerves happen to everyone, get used to it, it's nothing new. So those are my top tips for the final 24 hours before an exam. No cramming, lots of walking, lots of oxygen, plenty of water, and just enjoyment of the exam. You can watch all my other videos for learning what to do on the GMAT, GRE and other exams, but this video is just for the on-the-day advice. I did each of these things and it worked out pretty well, so I just wanted to convey my advice. There's no guarantees in life, but if you follow these tips, it might give you that slight 5–10% edge over the exam takers who are not following this advice. So if you feel like you might follow any of these tips and you may have benefited from this video, you know what I'm going to ask you to do, so I might not even bother to ask you because you know what I'm going to say. Anyway, have a wonderful day and of course, good luck.